All right, we're gonna go ahead and start prepping these doors and drawer fronts for paint. So first, if you'll remember back a little while ago, I showed you guys how to Bondo these little holes that we're getting rid of. If you're gonna use the same holes, you don't even have to do it, but we're changing the hardware on this and the spacing didn't work. So I'm just gonna take a little orbital sander and I'm just gonna pop it over that spot where I bondoed real quick, just to smooth it out a little bit and just to make it easier. So I'm gonna do that on all the doors and drawer fronts. And then at the same time, I'm also gonna take all the little rubber stops off the backs of these doors and drawers and get rid of them. So, because we don't want them, they're gonna be in our way. There's a little bit of adhesive left here that you can probably see. I'll try and scrape off as much as I can. And then I'll come back with a little rag that has some acetone on it and just wipe that off, and it'll take whatever adhesive I have left on there off of it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit this real quick and then get all these knocked out before I prime. I just sanded the spots where I bonded those holes down, popped off all of those little rubber doorstop pad things, and it leaves some adhesive on there and it's sticky. So a lot of people like to use goof off on this kind of stuff to get this adhesive off. I don't, because goof off is just really oily, or any of those types of products are just super oily, and that's just the enemy to paint sticking to these doors. So I use acetone. Acetone is kind of harsh, and it's not great to be in contact with, but it just does the job so quickly and so easily, so I like it. The other thing is you can see the backside here where I bonded this hole. There's a tiny bit of Bondo residue around the outside of that.
Bada bing.
It's quick and easy. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and just apply acetone to these doors and get all of the adhesive from these pads off of here, and there's like 3 or 4 of them on every one of these doors, so this is gonna take me a little while, but I'm gonna get it done. And then after I'm done with that, I'm gonna grab that warm soapy water just like we did with the cabinets inside and get all of these things cleaned up, let them dry, and then start priming. While I was doing all the prep on these cabinets and we were wiping everything down, we actually saw that this door has been split right here, which probably happened because somebody tried to hyperextend the hinge, or the cabinet had been opened up and it got bumped into or whatever like that. But if you come see right here, there is this crack and the panel absolutely moves. So it's kind of a tight one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of like push it open, grab some wood glue and try and force as much wood glue down into that thing as I possibly can, and then let that dry. And then we'll clean up the mess here in a second after I clamp it up, but I'm just gonna keep pushing wood glue down into that thing, opening it up, trying to force as much as I can down in there, because I tried to get into it on the front of the panel as well. And if you can actually see, they actually nailed this thing. There's a little tiny nail right there, nail hole right there. So whoever built this door did that, so it makes it so that the front of the cabinet really doesn't want to move around. But if you look on the back here, it really split, it's obvious. But on the front, it's actually split in the joint. So I'm gonna try and just get a little bit of glue on the joint here and try and open that up as well. Force any glue I can down in there with my fingers. Somebody else may have a way better way of doing this. I do not. So that's all we're gonna do. And then I'm just gonna wipe my fingers off here because I'm covered in glue. And then I'm just gonna throw a quick clamp on there. And I'm not gonna clamp this too tight because I don't want the door. Sometimes I see some people really wrench down on these things. See, you can see when I started to clamp down on that, the glue is starting to squeeze out of the joint. That's a great sign. And I'm just gonna get it to right there for now. And I'm gonna wipe that joint off. The little soapy rag that I just used to clean everything else off. And then we'll let that dry. That'll be one of the last doors that I prep when I prime everything up. But you can see if you have any doors that need to repair, it's pretty quick. And you can see how much of that glue squeezed out of that joint in the back when we squeezed it together. So we're just gonna do that. Dry it off. And when that's dry, we should be good to go. All right, so we have wiped all the cabinet doors down, we got all the adhesive off and everything like that, sanding them down as good as we're gonna get. Now it's time to spray some primer on these things. So what I've got here is I've just got a couple sawhorses, and I actually just have a couple flimsy pieces of 3/4 inch MDF in here, which is not ideal. I'd rather have a couple 2x4s, longer, more space, but this is what I have right now, so I'm working with what I've got. And what I do is I elevate them up off of the painting surface with these little painting pyramids. So they're just little plastic pyramids that sit down. They actually have a couple holes. If you ever wanted to screw them to anything to have them be more secure, you could do that too. But I just set them down on top of here, and then I set my cabinet doors down just like that. So I just take them, set them down like that. And the main reason why I do this is that when you're painting and you're spraying down, first of all, you don't want it to stick to whatever you're painting it to. So if you have paint on the edge and you have paint on whatever's underneath, when the paint dries, obviously it'll leave a line, it'll stick and create a big problem. The other thing is that, sometimes it bounces, stuff that any dirt or dust or debris that may be on there, just kind of keeps it away from the paint, just makes it better. But so anyway, I got these on Amazon. They're really inexpensive. I think they're like, 20 in a pack, and I want to say they're like, I can't remember. I'll post a link on there so you guys can see. But I use these and I set them underneath, and using the same Extreme Bond primer from Sherwin Williams that we used on the cabinets inside. I'm going to use my handheld Graco sprayer again, and we're going to knock these things out, start priming. You can start however you want, but I always start with by priming the backs of everything. So I'll prime the backs of the doors, the backs of the drawer fronts, and I'll follow that exact same process when I'm doing my final coats of paint. I'll paint the back, and then I'll flip them over after they've dried, and I'll paint the fronts. That way, the last surface I'm always touching is always the face of the cabinet, which is the part that everybody's seeing. So I'm gonna go ahead, start priming these things, and getting this stuff knocked out. The backside of everything primed. Prep time was about 2 hours, I'd say, to get everything scraped off, wiped down, dried off. Painting time, Graco sprayer, 20 minutes maybe? I mean, it was so fast. So backsides are all painted now. We're gonna let this dry overnight, and tomorrow morning I'm gonna come back, flip all these things over, and prime them and prime the front sides. A little trick you saw in the video there is I just took some gallon paint cans, and I just lifted these door panels off the painting area that I was using and just stuck them over there so that I could just keep painting. Some people have racks that they like to put them on. I don't have a rack. I wish I did, but I don't. So that's just my way to improvise. And then I just painted these drawer fronts just right here on the floor, put those little triangles on underneath them, little pyramids. And so let all this stuff dry overnight. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna flip these things over and get these things done. All right, so I've got all these doors primed front and back, and I just want to show you, after you prime, you're gonna see little spots like this. So in the joinery of the cabinet face, or in the cabinet door here, you'll see that there's a little crack, there's a little pinhole right here, and this is why I always fill my holes after I prime, because it just makes it so much easier to see this. So I just take this painter's putty, which you can just get Lowe's and Home Depot, just get some on my finger, and I just roll it up in my finger, and then I just come in here and I just press it in. And I'm not worried about getting it all perfect right now. I'm just trying to press it in there. And I'm gonna come back a little bit later with a putty knife, and I'm going to scrape it nice and flat. Usually I wait a little while, but just for demonstration purposes, I'll show you. I'll just come back like this with my putty knife, scrape it flat, just work it down like that, and then gets rid of that joint. All right, so I primed these doors, and we filled some of the little holes in. I've waited a little while. Just want to show you what I do after I've waited. So you can see that there's some of this painter's putty on these cabinet panels here. So I just come in here with my putty knife and just gently go like this. You can see the little spot that was filled, the little dark spot there. There was just a hole in the cabinet. So do the same thing here, like that. And I just take my finger, softly smooth it out. Same with this one. There's another spot right here. So you can see there was a pretty big little spot there, just a little void in the wood. And I'll come back, I'm just gonna smooth it over with my finger, clean anything out like that. After I do that, I'll come back, because this is, like I said, this is just primer. I just feel the door. It's always rough after you prime it, and so I always just take a little bit of sandpaper. This is some 220, it's kind of worn down. And I just sand the door like this, until when I rub my hand over it, everything is just nice and smooth. And I'll do that to the edge of the panel here. Feeling for everything to feel nice and smooth. This is really where you're gonna make a difference in what your paint looks like when you paint. It's not like, I mean, obviously painting it, your technique of when you paint and how you paint will make a big difference. What kind of paint you use and all that matters, but if you don't prep, even the best paint isn't gonna do anything for you. So if it feels rough and bumpy right now, it will be rough and bumpy when it has paint on it. So I come in here and I just clean up all these edges, and I feel it with my hand. I just have a little wood sanding block in my hand underneath the sandpaper. I'm not going in super aggressive, nice and light, just knocking those edges down. And I'll use my hand on this piece of the coat for the raised panel here. Just knocking down any little dust balls that may have fallen on the paint while it was drying, while it was primed, or anything that I missed when I was cleaning them off. Feels pretty nice and smooth now. Little spot right there. Feels pretty nice. And then after I do that, take my air hose. I throw it all off. And I do that on every door, and I get them all ready and I stack them up, because you don't want to be using your air hose and blowing everything off after you have wet paint. So when I start setting these doors down after I've painted them, I set them down, I'm not gonna grab my air hose anymore and come in here and blow anything off these panels, because then I'm just gonna send those those dust particles or whatever it is, airborne, to land right on top of my fresh paint. So I do all this first and get everything totally ready, wipe it down, and make sure there's no dust on them, so that when I do start painting, we're all ready to go. All right, so everything else that I've been doing in this laundry room and on my cabinet doors and everything that I showed you, I've been using my handheld sprayer, the battery-powered Graco Ultra sprayer. Today I'm going to be using this airless sprayer. I've had it for a while now. It's been great. It's the Magnum X5. It's really like a, I don't know, like a homeowner slash hobbyist model of their airless sprayers. They certainly go way up from there. If you're going to be spraying a lot of paint all the time, you know, I definitely invest in a model that's more expensive than this, but for me, for what I do for painting cabinets, painting doors in my house, crown molding baseboard, this is fantastic. So Once again, we're using Sherwin Williams Emerald paint today. Nice urethane. And we're gonna spray this. Gonna get it going and get these doors and drawers done. So first thing we're gonna do, get our paint open. Right now I've got a bunch of water in this line because I was getting my pump armor out of my sprayer. So I'm just gonna go ahead, prime my sprayer. I'm just gonna get some of this water out of the hose a little bit here. So I'm gonna dump a bunch of water in my paint. And going to turn this off. I'm just gonna drop this right into my bucket. And then I'm gonna prime it. So I'm gonna turn this thing on. Down nice and low. I'll prime it until my paint comes out of my priming fluid. So my white paint, it was sucked up through the draw tube here into my pump and then out my priming hose. So I'm just gonna let that sit in my bucket of water here so it doesn't get all hard while I'm painting. Leave my bucket of paint just like this, my lid. Now the next thing to do is grab my sprayer and I'm gonna test it here on this piece of cardboard, just make sure I'm getting the pressure right. Today I'm using a 211 tip. It's not gonna be the fine finish tips because I don't have any for this sprayer that I was using on the other one, but it's got a little bit smaller orifice than what I was using on that other sprayer, but it'll work just fine. I've sprayed through this with this tip before, same paint, and it turned out great, so I'm just gonna keep rolling with it. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna dial up my pressure a little bit. Actually gonna get the paint. I've got a bunch of water in this hose. So I've got my primer off, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna get the water out of this thing until I have paint coming out here in my bucket. Just got a bunch of water in it because I store it with all the water in the hose and the pump armor in the pump. And now it's pure paint. No more water, so I'm ready to start testing my pressure. I know from past experience that I need to be up a little bit higher than where I'm at right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and just crank it up there. I just come in here and I'm just gonna paint real quick. See how it has these little lines on the outside called tails? We know we don't want that, so we're gonna crank it up a little bit more. We're gonna paint again here. Still have them. Crank my pressure up a little bit more. Getting closer. Getting real close. See here. Pretty stinking nice. Flip this around. Just make sure I've got it the way I want it. No, still a little bit of striation there. Crank this thing up just a little bit more. A little bit more. And thinking I like it right there. Yep, I like it. So now that I've dialed in my paint sprayer, got it all primed up, ready to go, and start painting my doors. I'm sure there's a bunch of methods professional painters would suggest, do this, do that. I don't know what those are. I just come in here and I do light coats. I overlap 50%. I try to get into all the nooks and crannies. One mistake I've seen made over and over again by me is trying to put too much paint on at once. See, it's so easy to spray a lot of paint on there, so just do nice light even coats. Don't overlap, don't come back and spray. Always start your spray off of your work, finish it all the way through. So you're gonna come here, you're gonna pull the trigger here and spray all the way across this panel and end here. Don't pull it or start it or stop it anywhere in the area where you're gonna spray. So I'm gonna go ahead and just spray this. Like I said, some painters may think that my methods are not right, and they could be right. I don't know, but this works for me, and I get the results that I'm looking for. So one of the things I always make sure I do, because these are raised panel doors and they kind of have a crevice, I make sure that when I'm painting this way, I spray into that gap between the raised panel and the frame. I'll do the same thing on the ends of the frame and over here. So that's an area where I've applied way too much paint in the past, and I'm going to be extra mindful and careful not to do it now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this panel with this first coat of its paint. Then I'm going to hit the edges. Hit this edge. And then this edge. And that's our first coat of paint. I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going to set it on my racks over here. I'm going to keep replacing these doors until we're all done. Then I'm going to take all these things up, set them back up on here, and I'm going to do a second coat.